She couldn't breathe. The billionaire's daughter, shaking, clawing at her blazer, eyes wild with panic, collapsed behind a marble pillar while executives stepped around her like spilled champagne. And just before she passed out, the janitor knelt down. He whispered something in Latin, slow and steady, like he'd done this 1,000 times before. Within seconds, her lungs obeyed. Her body calmed. She looked at him like he'd just saved her life, because he had. Then her father arrived. Graham Leland, the empire builder himself, pulled her to her feet without asking a single question and stared down the man in coveralls like he was dirt on his shoes. "Don't touch my daughter again," he said. No gratitude, no curiosity, just fury that someone without a corner office had dared to be useful. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the man holding a mop used to hold a scalpel. He walked away from the world of elite pediatric surgery on his own terms. And now the most powerful man in the building had just picked a fight with someone who used to save lives for a living. It happened in under 90 seconds, but the fallout would last a lifetime. "Don't touch my daughter again." The words landed sharp, loud, and public. Graham Leland's voice echoed off the executive lobby's glass walls like a slap across a boardroom table. He stood at the edge of the marble atrium, blazer unbuttoned, fists clenched, anger dressed in a $3,000 suit. "She was panicking," Elias said, voice low but even. No one else moved. The security team stiffened behind Graham, unsure whether to drag Elias away or pretend this confrontation wasn't happening at all. Beside them, Isla Leland, 17 and trembling, clutched her blazer with both hands, her breath finally slowing. "I spoke Latin," Elias added. "It calms the brainstem." A flicker passed over Graham's face. Confusion, then something close to disgust. "You think quoting dead languages makes mopping floors more impressive? Subscribe now if you've ever seen a man punished not for failure, but for doing the right thing too well. Because what comes next? You're not going to forget it." Graham turned without another word, pulling Isla along stiffly. The girl glanced back once over her shoulder. She didn't look afraid of Elias. She looked grateful. Elias stood motionless, mop still in one hand. His shirt was damp. His knuckles were red. He'd dropped the bucket when he saw her crouch behind the column, breath hitching, fists shaking like trapped birds. She hadn't been making a scene. She'd been trying not to. And that was what made Graham's fury worse. He hadn't asked what happened. He just saw a janitor next to his daughter. Camilla Tran stepped out from behind the front desk, slow and tentative. "I saw what you did, Elias," she said, keeping her voice low. "That breathing pattern, 5 in, 5 hold, 7. Out?" He nodded without looking at her. "It works when you don't want anyone to know you're panicking." Camilla glanced at the elevator, where Graham and Isla had disappeared. "I'll try to smooth it over. You probably saved her from fainting." "That's not how he saw it." She didn't argue. She only looked at his mop and then at the fading wet circle near the pillar where Isla had been sitting. "You want to write an incident report?" "No." His voice didn't waver. "You write incident reports when you make mistakes." He turned and wheeled the bucket back toward the janitor closet, the echo of his boots swallowed by marble and air conditioning. Elias Mercer had not always walked like this, with shoulders slightly slumped, steps quiet, eyes down. Once, his presence had filled operating rooms with calm. Once, his words had been the final authority on chaos. Once, he'd walked into trauma bays with blood on his sleeves and steady hands that knew exactly what to do. But that was before Vivian, before Miranda's death, before he traded surgical gowns for a mop and the weight of grief for the rhythm of routines. Now, he worked nights and early mornings at Leland HQ, an empire built on software and stock indexes. He didn't need recognition. He needed a paycheck, health benefits for Vivian's asthma meds, and quiet hallways where no one asked why a janitor could quote Seneca or realign a broken finger. Most days, it worked, but not today. Today, a girl had almost collapsed, and Elias had instinctively stepped forward, not as a custodian, but as a doctor. And the world had snapped back like a rubber band. He opened the janitor closet and slipped inside, locking the door behind him. The light flickered once before settling. On the top shelf, tucked behind paper towel boxes, lay a worn hardcover, neuroregulation, and language recovery in pediatric trauma. Its edges were frayed, Latin annotations curved along the margins in his own handwriting. He'd meant to donate it. Every time he looked at it, he didn't. Down the hall, elevator doors chimed open and shut. 10 minutes later, he found Vivian waiting for him near the staff exit. Her backpack was too big for her small frame, a lopsided purple thing with mismatched zippers. "You okay?" she asked, noticing the tightness in his shoulders. "Yeah." "You got that look." "What look?" "The one where you're not mad, but you're going to be quiet for the rest of the night." He smiled barely. "How about pancakes?" Her face lit up. "With cinnamon?" "Always." They walked out together toward the parking lot, past rows of sleek black sedans and personalized license plates. Elias's car was older, sun-faded, reliable, just like he needed to be. Behind them, security cameras blinked red. Somewhere in the building, Graham Leland was already rewriting the narrative, and somewhere else, far deeper, something else had started to shift. Vivian held his hand as they crossed the asphalt. Her small fingers looped into his like she'd done since the day she was born. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "What does respira cum pace mean?" Elias paused. "It means breathe with peace." He didn't tell her the rest. That phrase had once been the last thing he whispered to a boy whose heart stopped 3 times on the table and still walked out of the ICU 2 weeks later. "Where are you watching from?" Because the man Graham Leland humiliated today wasn't the man he actually provoked. And when the next crisis comes, power won't save him, but the janitor might. The next morning, the official incident report read like Elias had caused a disruption, not prevented one. Unscheduled staff-civilian interaction, it said. Breach of proximity protocol. Graham Leland hadn't filed it himself. That task fell to an assistant vice president. But the message was the same. Stay in your place. Elias read it twice in the staff hallway while the floor buffer hummed behind him. He signed the acknowledgement line without comment. No one had asked for his version. He didn't need to look far to find Camilla. She found him first, clipboard tucked to her side, eyes cautious. "They're saying it's standard policy," she said, voice low. "Any physical contact with executives or their families needs to be formally logged." "She couldn't breathe," Elias replied, his tone dry. "Next time, I'll request permission first." Camilla winced. "Look, I'm not defending it, okay? I don't think this was really about you touching her." He tilted his head. "No?" She hesitated. "I think it was about her letting you." That stopped him, not because it was surprising, but because it wasn't. The note came at the end of his shift, folded in quarters, and slipped beneath his thermos in the janitor's closet. Vivian was already in the car waiting for school when he opened it. The handwriting was small, careful. "I'm sorry he spoke to you like that. You didn't do anything wrong. Thank you. Isla. No last name, no plea for help. Just thanks. Unsigned but unmistakable." Elias didn't show the note to Vivian. Some things he kept to himself, especially the ones that didn't belong to him. Later that afternoon, Camilla knocked on the janitor closet door. "You busy?" "I'm a janitor," he said. "There's always something to clean." She stepped in anyway. "I looked you up." His shoulders tensed. "Background checks come up clean." "I didn't check your background," she said. "I checked the footage." He met her eyes now. "The lobby cameras?" "You never touched her aggressively. You didn't even initiate contact. She grabbed you. You just guided her hand down so she could ground herself." "That's what I told security," he said. "They didn't listen. They weren't supposed to." Camilla didn't respond to that. Instead, she crossed her arms. "So, where'd you learn to do that?" Elias shrugged. "Read a lot, live long enough, you learn to calm people down." "Latin, though," she pressed. "That wasn't in any corporate wellness seminar I've been to." He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the mop and leaned it against the wall like punctuation. "Okay," she said, backing off. Message received. Upstairs, Graham's day unfolded with a different rhythm. Isla hadn't spoken much since the episode. When asked, she only muttered that she was fine and returned to her tablet. The incident had been packaged, spun, and sealed, but something in her posture hadn't returned to normal. At one point, she asked her father if he knew the man who helped her. "He's staff," Graham replied flatly. "And he crossed a line." Isla didn't ask again. That evening, Elias sat in his car outside Vivian's school, waiting for her after drama rehearsal. The note was folded inside his wallet now, next to a photo of Miranda holding newborn Vivian in a hospital room. Her eyes looked the same as Isla's had, wide with panic, fighting to be calm, desperate to appear strong. Miranda had suffered from post-op complications. By the time Elias got off his shift, the internal bleed had already begun. He never forgave himself, not for her death, not for not being there. That guilt had shaped his life into strict patterns, things he could fix, things he could hold steady, and a daughter he could keep safe, no matter what. A soft knock on the window snapped him back. Vivian climbed into the car, cheeks flushed from rehearsal. "Dad, guess what?" "What?" "I got a call back. They want me to try the lead." "That's amazing," she beamed. "Yeah, but I'm not sure if I should take it." The other girl looked disappointed. Elias glanced at her. "Did she get the call back?" "No." "Then you take it. And when you're on that stage, you make space for her in how you shine." Vivian smiled. "Like you did yesterday?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" "I heard some teachers talking. Said a girl had an anxiety attack, and a janitor saved her." Elias started the car. "Don't believe everything you hear." Vivian tilted her head. "Why not?" He didn't answer. But later that night, as she fell asleep with her script on her chest, he opened the medical book again. Not to read, just to touch the pages. Downstairs, back at Leland HQ, Camilla stood at the security terminal, watching the lobby footage again. Elias's hands never trembled, not once. His grip was perfect. His posture, centered. His technique, textbook. But she didn't know what textbook. And that was the first real clue. The next time Camilla saw Elias, he was crouched inside the executive wellness suite, sleeves rolled up, surrounded by silence. A cabinet door hung open at an odd angle, its hinges snapped clean. The staff medic had already submitted a ticket to facilities, but Elias had arrived first. He wasn't assigned here today. He just happened to pass by, mop in hand, when someone muttered about the broken unit, and now he was fixing it, without blueprints, without help, and without hesitation. She watched from the hallway for a full minute. He didn't notice her. His movements were clean, efficient, strangely elegant. He used a flathead screwdriver the way a surgeon might use a scalpel. Grip low, pressure precise, focus locked in. "You're not supposed to be in here," she said softly. Elias didn't flinch. "Neither are you." Camilla stepped inside, lowering her voice. "Facilities marked it non-urgent." "It stores the portable oxygen units," he replied, tightening a hinge. "If someone collapses again and those doors jam, you lose minutes. Which you happen to know how to save." He glanced at her, tools still in hand. "Depends on what you're losing." The screws slid in smoothly. The metal clicked back into place with a quiet finality. Elias tested the hinges 3 times, then stood, wiping his palms on a clean rag he kept in his back pocket. Not a trace of hesitation in his posture. "You always carry those?" Camilla asked. "Tools," he said, folding the rag. "Some people carry pens. I like being useful." She studied his face. "You ever work maintenance?" He shook his head. "Not officially?" "What then?" "I'm a janitor." "You're not." He didn't argue. He didn't confirm either. Later that day, the suite's night nurse mentioned to Camilla in passing that Elias had once reprogrammed the massage chair when it shorted and started sparking. Just pulled it apart with a screwdriver, muttered something in Latin, and fixed it in 15 minutes, she laughed. "I mean, who does that?" Camilla didn't laugh. She Googled. Then she stopped Googling, because the name Elias Mercer pulled up nothing. No social profiles, no news articles, no licenses, no interviews. Just one line buried in a 10-year-old journal citation with an unreadable DOI link. Mercer, E. et al. Neuroregulation and Pediatric Sedation Recovery, published in a European trauma journal. Co-author, that's all. But it was enough. Back on the 22nd floor, Graham stood in a conference room, rehearsing a speech for the upcoming investor summit. Isla sat in the corner, earbuds in, pretending not to listen. His assistant handed him a note card with key metrics. "You should mention the mentorship program," she said. "Looks compassionate, softens the tech jargon." Graham barely glanced at it. "Is it making money?" "No, but the optics are solid. HR says staff morale's gone up. Some janitor even signed up for it." He raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" "Yeah, name's Mercer. Apparently his daughter wants to be a doctor. Someone told her to apply for the program, so she signed up her dad to help her. Understand hospitals better. Cute, right?" Graham snorted. "If that's what morale looks like, we need new metrics." Isla shifted slightly in the corner. She didn't smile. That evening, Elias picked up Vivian from the clinic. She emerged bouncing, her asthma test clean for the third month in a row. "I told you it's the cinnamon," she beamed. "No," Elias said, guiding her into the car. "It's your lungs, and the breathing, and the medication you keep trying to avoid." She giggled, kicking her heels against the seat. "I'm still going to be a doctor, right?" He looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. "You already are." She tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "You notice symptoms, you track patterns, you help people. But I'm not like you." He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "No, you're better." Back at Leland HQ, Camilla wandered down to the wellness suite one more time. She ran her fingers along the fixed cabinet door. No scratches, no leftover debris, no signs of struggle. It was like watching someone erase a crisis before it happened. That was the moment she decided. She wasn't just curious anymore. She needed to know who Elias Mercer used to be. Because people don't just become this precise, this calm, this prepared, unless they once had to be. The summons came through Camilla, though she hadn't volunteered for the task. "CEO wants to see you," she said, catching Elias just as he was restocking supplies on the 19th floor. "Now." Elias didn't flinch. He replaced the last pack of paper towels, closed the cart, and gave a short nod. "Let's not keep royalty waiting." Camilla walked with him to the executive elevator, but didn't ride up. As the doors closed, her expression lingered in the reflective steel, equal parts concern and something like guilt. The 32nd floor was quiet, carpeted in charcoal gray, with spotlit art on the walls and a view of the skyline that made the world below look irrelevant. Elias had cleaned this floor countless times, but he'd never been summoned to it. Graham's assistant waved him in. No greeting, no offer of water. Just a perfunctory gesture toward the inner sanctum. The CEO's office smelled like polished wood and sharp cologne. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a conquest. Graham Leland sat behind a mahogany desk, posture military straight, suit jacket slung over the back of his chair. He didn't stand. "Sit," he said. Elias remained standing. "I prefer to work on my feet." "Suit yourself." Graham tapped a pen once against his notepad. "You've been here how long?" 13 months. "And in that time, you become something of a fixture." "I clean, fixtures are my specialty." A muscle jumped in Graham's jaw. "I don't like clever janitors." "Then fire me." Graham leaned back. "Not yet, because that might look bad. Optics, you know, especially after what happened with Isla." Elias stayed quiet. "I read the report," Graham continued. "I've seen the footage, and before you puff up with pride, let me make something clear. You stepped outside your station. She was alone, distressed. You weren't there." "I pay a staff of 20 for that," Graham snapped. "It's not your job to intervene, your background." Elias met his gaze calmly. "Sometimes the background saves the picture." A silence followed, not long, just enough to shift the power in the room a fraction. "You think that makes you indispensable?" Graham asked. "No one is indispensable," Elias said, "especially not janitors." Another pause. Then Graham dropped the pretense. "What were you before this?" Elias's eyes narrowed just slightly. "Employed." Graham leaned forward, voice cooling. "You know what I think? I think you're running from something. Men like you don't end up with mops unless something went wrong." Elias didn't answer, because it wasn't a question, it was a provocation. And Graham wasn't done. "Here's how this works," he said. You stay quiet, you stay out of sight, you don't talk to my daughter again, you don't speak Latin, you don't try to impress anyone, you clock in, you clock out, you vanish. Elias studied the skyline behind Graham, then returned his gaze to the man in front of it. Is that what you tell yourself about people who make you uncomfortable? I tell myself the truth, Graham said, which is that people like you always want something. I had a daughter in the building, Elias said quietly. That's all I wanted. That she'd be safe, that maybe, for once, a powerful man wouldn't make her invisible. Graham's expression didn't move. You're dismissed. Elias turned without another word. Camilla caught him 2 floors down. She looked like she'd been waiting by the elevator. How bad? She asked. He doesn't like clever janitors. She winced. I figured. Elias adjusted the strap on his supply bag. He asked what I used to be. What did you tell him? Nothing. Camilla hesitated, then followed him down the hall. You know what I think? I'm afraid to ask. I think you scare him. Elias raised an eyebrow. I mop floors. He owns continents. You stayed calm in front of him. People like Graham hate that. They spend their lives being the most composed person in every room. Elias said nothing. And then you walked in, Camilla added. Didn't flinch, spoke in dead languages, stabilized his daughter without asking, fixed his cabinet, rewired a chair. You didn't beg, you didn't shrink. I didn't threaten him either, Elias said. Camilla gave him a look. You didn't have to. That night, Elias returned home to find Vivian asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket with a medical anatomy book open. On her chest, her glasses were crooked, a pencil was still tucked behind her ear. He knelt beside her and gently eased the book away. In the margin of one diagram, she'd written, Emergency Airways. Respira cum pace. He stared at it for a long time. Then, quietly, he reached into the hall closet and pulled down an old leather bag. It creaked at the hinges, coated in dust. Inside were the tools of a past life. Reflex hammer, scope, trauma shears, clean, preserved, unused, for now. The rain fell in sheets that morning, sharp, slanted, relentless. Elias sat alone under the edge of a loading dock awning, lunch balanced on his knees. A dented thermos, a cloth-wrapped sandwich, and a worn hardcover wedged between his boot and the wall to keep it dry. Not a novel, not a magazine, a medical textbook, Latin title, no jacket, corners dog-eared, pages annotated by hand. Camilla saw it before he saw her. She'd been walking toward the back entrance, arms full of orientation packets, when the sight stopped her cold. Elias was focused, thumbing through a page with the kind of reverence most people reserve for photo albums. He wasn't reading casually. He was studying. For a long moment, she just watched. Then she stepped closer, and her shoes slapped wet pavement as she spoke. That's not casual reading. Elias didn't look up. Didn't bring a thriller today. Camilla set the folders down beside him, eyeing the title, Neuroregulation and Pediatric Sedation Recovery. You know, for a janitor, she said, you've got a pretty specific taste in literature. Helps me sleep. Latin medical texts. They're quiet. He finally looked at her. Rainwater dripped from the brim of his cap. His expression gave nothing away. Camilla crouched beside the book. She didn't touch it, just studied the markings. The handwriting in the margins was tight and disciplined, like someone writing notes for others, not for themselves. This yours? She asked. He gave a single nod. From before? Elias closed the book. Does it matter? It does to me. She didn't press. She didn't need to. The textbook had already said more than Elias would, and in the sudden silence, another voice cut through the sound of rain. Daddy! Vivian's feet splashed across the parking lot, her too big raincoat flapping behind her. She was soaked, beaming, her backpack bouncing as she ran toward them. Camilla blinked. Your daughter's here? Elias stood as Vivian launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his waist. We got out early. Teacher had a dentist emergency. I told the front desk I was meeting you. See? Responsible. You were supposed to text, Elias said, pulling the hood over her head. You're drenched. Mom would have let me climb the gutters. She also once gave herself a concussion doing it. Vivian turned to Camilla with open curiosity. Hi. Hi, Camilla smiled. I didn't know your dad brought visitors. I'm not a visitor. I'm the reason he packs lunch. Camilla laughed. Do you work here too? Vivian asked. HR. Vivian's brow furrowed. Oh, the people who make people cry in tiny rooms. Elias shot her a look. Vivian. What? I said tiny rooms, not scary. Camilla smiled through it. She's not wrong. Elias picked up the book again, brushing moisture off the cover. Vivian noticed. You brought that one today? It was on top. She reads that a lot, Vivian told Camilla proudly. He pretends he's not studying it, but he is. Sometimes he mutters stuff while doing dishes, Latin stuff. He helped this girl once with it. She was all shaky and couldn't breathe. Camilla's eyes flicked to Elias. You helped someone here? She asked, already knowing the answer. Vivian nodded. Yep. And then her dad got mad. Grown-ups are weird. Elias gently squeezed her shoulder. Okay, storyteller. Let's not rewrite history. I'm just saying it's true. He used to be... Elias's voice cut cleanly through hers. Vivian. She stopped. Camilla didn't press, but the look she gave Elias was different now. Layered, weighted. She wasn't just curious anymore. She was building a case in her mind, piece by piece. By the time Elias got Vivian settled with a cocoa in the staff lounge, the rain had slowed to a steady patter. She pulled out a sketchbook and started doodling a hospital room, complete with monitors, IV bags, and a tiny figure in a coat. Camilla lingered by the door. She's smart, she said. Too smart sometimes. She sees more than you think. I know. You want to keep her safe. That's the whole job. Camilla paused. But at some point, don't you think she deserves to know the whole of who her father is? Elias didn't answer. She nodded slowly. That book, that was the first honest thing I've seen you carry. Back at her desk, Camilla opened her search again. Elias Mercer plus trauma surgery. Elias Mercer plus pediatrics. Elias Mercer plus medical license. Still nothing. Then, with a stroke of luck, she found it again. Volume 117 of the European Journal of Pediatric Medicine. The same citation, the same co-author line. But this time, a single note in the appendix caught her eye. E. Mercer, United States, formerly chief surgical resident, MedVista Baltimore Trauma Center. And that was not the background of a janitor, not even close. The hallway outside the boardroom echoed with the kind of silence only wealth could afford. Polished stone, recessed lighting, not a single paper out of place. Inside, the board was mid-presentation. Isla sat against the far wall beside her father, a glass of water untouched in her hand. Elias passed by with his cart, mop bucket sloshing faintly. He didn't look in, but he didn't have to. He could hear her breathing shift. One stuttered, inhale, a pause, then another, sharper this time. The door wasn't closed fully. No one inside noticed the girl's hands trembling again. Her blazer sleeve tugged over her palm, her back straight but rigid. Graham kept speaking, unaware or unwilling to see. Elias stopped mid-step. A choice bloomed in the quiet. Step away and do nothing. Again. Or intervene and invite another warning, another report, another public punishment. He chose neither. Instead, he shifted the mop handle to his left, leaned slightly into the doorframe without crossing it, and spoke gently, just loud enough to slip through the crack. Focus on the number 5, Miss Leland. A pause. No one inside turned. 5 in, hold it. 7 out. A breath caught. He continued, calm and practiced. Focus on the sound of your own breath. Not the room, not the people, not the silence, just the rhythm. Isla's shoulders lowered half an inch. Her hand released her blazer cuff. She blinked twice, then took one clean, full breath. Graham didn't notice, but Camilla, standing 2 doors down, clipboard in hand, did. And she didn't just notice Isla. She noticed Elias's posture, the quiet control, the surgical cadence of his words. This wasn't a guess. This was training. Camilla waited until Elias stepped away, then slipped into the boardroom just as it ended. The lights brightened, papers shuffled. Graham checked his watch. You all right? He asked Isla, not entirely making eye contact. Fine, she said quickly. I just got lightheaded. Camilla crouched beside her. You sure? Want to take a minute in the wellness suite? Isla hesitated. Could we? Camilla nodded, giving a side glance toward Graham. Of course. In the elevator, Isla spoke first. Was that lady from HR? Camilla smiled. Yes, and you're Isla. She nodded. I like you better than the others. You don't talk like I'm fragile. You're not. I just get stuck. Sometimes, my brain loops too fast. Camilla didn't push. She waited. Isla fiddled with her bracelet. The janitor helped me again. The one from the other day. Did anyone see? I don't think so. He didn't come in, just said those Latin words again. Camilla tilted her head. He helped before too, didn't he? Isla nodded. First time it ever worked. The elevator chimed. Back on the 18th floor, Camilla pulled Elias aside by the vending machines. Her voice was lower than usual. She told me. Elias didn't pretend not to understand. I didn't touch her, he said flatly. I know, I saw. You gonna write it up? No, he raised an eyebrow. I'm going to record it. She held up her phone, not to threaten, but to show a silent playback. Just the audio. Faint. Controlled. Elias's voice coaching Isla back to balance. No names, no confrontation, just proof of competence, professionalism, care. Why? He asked. Because someday soon, Camilla said. She's going to need someone who actually knows what they're doing. And when that moment comes, I want the board to remember this, not Graham's version. Elias looked at her. Really looked. You believe me now. I don't just believe you, she said. I trust you, which means something around here. She started to walk away, then paused. What did you do before this, Elias? He didn't respond. Camilla didn't press, but the silence felt different now, less like deflection and more like protection. That night, Elias tucked Vivian into bed early. She'd fallen asleep reading again. A new book opened beside her. Emergency Medicine for Preteens, unofficial edition. He smiled, then walked to the garage. There, under a box marked Old Linens, he pulled out a bundle wrapped in plastic. His old trauma coat, still white, still crisp, still his. He held it for a long time, not with nostalgia, but with precision, like a man preparing for something inevitable. In her own apartment, Camilla stared at the name on her screen again. Med Vista Baltimore Trauma Center. She opened LinkedIn, searched the name. Still no Elias Mercer. She frowned, then thought of something. She searched doctors who left Med Vista in 2016 and found a news brief. Surgeon resigns after wife's unexpected death. Dr. Elias Mercer, former chief trauma resident. Camilla sat back. Not scandal, not exile, just grief. And maybe unfinished purpose. Camilla sat alone in the records room, lit only by the glow of her screen and the dull overhead fluorescence. Her finger hovered over the printout. She'd highlighted the name 3 times. Dr. Elias Mercer, former chief surgical resident at Med Vista Baltimore Trauma Center. Resigned in 2016. No scandal, no malpractice. Just a line in a quiet press release buried beneath years of noise. But the dates matched, the name matched, and now the voice, the one she'd heard on her phone that day, matched too. He wasn't just a janitor, he was a ghost from another world. Camilla exhaled, stood up, and crossed to the HR archive cabinet. Leland's system stored basic personnel data, bare-bones stuff, tax forms, ID scans, hiring dates. Elias's file was as thin as expected. Hired as custodial staff 13 months ago. Emergency contact, Vivian Mercer. No professional references, no resume. But tucked behind the back sheet, folded unevenly, was something strange. A signed liability waiver, voluntary demotion. Dated the day he applied. She read the line again. Applicant affirms understanding that this position does not recognize nor reflect prior professional credentials. It was there, in black and white. Elias chose this, not because he had to, but because he wanted to disappear. She carried the folder upstairs in silence. On her way, she passed the wellness suite. The cabinet Elias had fixed still held. A new oxygen tank had been added this week. Camilla made sure of it. If Isla went down again, there'd be no waiting. Not next time. Downstairs, Elias stood at the service sink, washing out the mop heads with deliberate care. The overhead fan hummed softly, a sound he'd grown to like. Routine kept things clean, quiet, predictable. Camilla stepped into the doorway. "You really didn't think I'd find out, did you?" He didn't look at her. "Didn't think you'd care." "I care about a lot of things," she said, holding out the folder. "But lies, even quiet ones, not one of them." He turned off the faucet. "I never lied. I'm a janitor is a lie by subtraction." He dried his hands slowly. "That part's still true." She tapped the folder. "And this?" He finally looked at her. His face didn't shift. Not even a flicker of shame or pride. Just stillness. "That was another life." "Why'd you leave it?" "Because I couldn't save someone I loved. And after that, I didn't trust my hands anymore." Camilla inhaled. "You trusted them 2 days ago. When Isla collapsed, he didn't answer. You kept this secret to protect her, didn't you?" A pause, then softly, "And my daughter." That stopped her. Camilla crossed her arms. "Okay, so now what?" "You tell me." "I tell you?" She stepped closer. "I'm not the one who abandoned a career that could save lives." "I didn't abandon it," Elias said, quietly but firmly. "I buried it. There's a difference." She sat across from him on an overturned bucket. They faced each other like uneasy allies in a forgotten war. "You don't have to go back," she said, "but you can't keep hiding. Not here, not after what happened." "What do you want from me, Camilla?" "I want you to be ready." "For what?" She hesitated. "For the moment, this building needs someone who actually knows what they're doing. Because it's coming. And we both know money won't solve it." Elias didn't reply. She stood, walked to the door, then paused. "There's a staff summit in 4 days. Media, executives, donors. And Graham's bringing Isla to speak. You and I both know that's not a good idea." Elias's jaw tightened. "He's using her." "She's not ready," Camilla said. "But she'll do it anyway. Because she wants his approval more than she wants air." He nodded once. Just once. But it was enough. That night, he sat on the floor of his living room, coat laid out before him. Vivian was asleep. The house was dark. Rain tapped gently at the window. He ran his fingers over the old stitching of his name. Dr. Elias Mercer. He didn't feel like that man anymore, but something inside him, something deep, still remembered how to be him. Upstairs, Camilla began assembling a file, not to submit, not yet, but to prepare. A list of everything she'd seen. The Latin. The medical precision. The way he stabilized Isla without. Hesitation. The repaired equipment. The footage. The research paper. She didn't know what would happen at the summit, but she knew one thing for certain. When the moment came, it wouldn't be Graham who saved the day. It would be the janitor who wasn't. The banners were up by 6 a.m. White linen, silver trim. The Leland Dynamics logo projected like a constellation on every wall of the downtown hotel's grand ballroom. The annual Future Tech Summit had arrived, and for Graham Leland, it wasn't just another investor event. It was his stage. Camilla stood near the main entrance, watching the flood of black suits and camera crews sweep in. Velvet ropes, champagne carts, security with earpieces and coded stares. The wealth in the room had its own scent. Floral, cold, expensive. Isla arrived shortly after 9, flanked by 2 handlers. Her blazer was pressed to perfection, her hair tucked behind one ear, but her fingers gripped the hem of her skirt with quiet desperation. Camilla caught her eye across the room. Isla didn't smile. Neither did Camilla. Graham was already working the crowd, shaking hands with foreign investors, flashing that curated grin meant to signal innovation, vision, control. But behind the smiles, the cracks were visible to anyone who looked closely. Camilla was looking. She spotted Elias exactly where she expected him, back by the coat check desk, sleeves rolled, floor quietly polished to a mirror sheen. A single clipboard hung from a nail behind him, his name tag slightly crooked. Intentional? She wasn't sure. He hadn't spoken to her since the file exchange in the archive room. But now he nodded once. Camilla nodded back. The pact was silent, but solid. Be ready. By 10:30, the room was full. Hundreds of seated guests, board members along the front row, cameras poised. Graham stepped onto the stage beneath blue-white spotlights, smiling like a man about to announce salvation. Welcome to the Future Tech Summit. This year, I'm proud to present not just our vision, but our legacy. Behind him, a giant screen flickered to life with drone footage of tech campuses, smiling employees, graphs that meant wealth. And now, Graham said, turning slightly, I want to introduce someone very special, my daughter, Isla Leland. Applause rose, loud but not warm. Isla walked onto the stage. Camilla's breath caught. Something was wrong. Elias hadn't moved, not a step, but his eyes followed Isla's every motion. Too stiff, breathing shallow, shoulders high. The same signs he'd seen outside the boardroom, the same signs Graham was ignoring. Isla reached the podium. Her fingers clutched the sides. The lights were too bright. She blinked fast, mouth opening, closing. The teleprompter began to scroll. Silence. Her chest rose too quickly. Then again, and again. Camilla whispered under her breath, "Get her off the stage." But no one moved. Graham was smiling from the sidelines, oblivious. Or, worse, choosing not to see. The ballroom remained still, waiting. Isla swayed. The microphone picked up her breathing, ragged now, shallow, as if air had narrowed to a straw. A few people in the front row began to murmur. Elias set the mop aside, slow, measured, deliberate. He walked toward the ballroom's edge, past waiters and security, past the rows of VIPs, eyes forward, movements calm. Camilla broke from her spot near the AV booth, pacing toward the side of the stage. A staffer stepped in her path, but she waved her badge with authority. "Clear the podium," she said. "Now." The staffer hesitated. That's when Isla's knees buckled. Gasps echoed. A chair scraped. The camera zoomed in. And Elias was already moving. He didn't run. He walked straight through the aisle like it belonged to him. Like he'd walked those steps in operating rooms and trauma bays, not boardrooms. As if this entire charade of power meant nothing when breath was failing. He reached the base of the stage in seconds. Isla was down, half-conscious, lips tinged gray. Elias knelt, pressed 2 fingers to her wrist. Pulses fast. "Still conscious," he muttered. Graham shouted, "Get security!" But Camilla cut in. "Shut up!" Graham froze. Elias gently tipped Isla onto her side, loosening her collar. "Isla, respira cum pace. Focus on my voice." The phrase hit like a tuning fork. Camilla recognized it. So did Isla. Her eyes fluttered open. Barely. Elias didn't look at the cameras, didn't explain himself. He only whispered Latin. And Isla listened. Her breath began to return. Camilla turned to the stunned assistant by the AV booth. "Cut the stream." The man hesitated. "But the investors—" "Cut it." The screen behind the stage blinked out. Silence fell. Everyone in that ballroom, hundreds of suits, reporters, execs, watched a janitor cradle the daughter of the most powerful man in the building, and no one dared interrupt. Elias sat with Isla until her breath steadied, until her muscles stopped trembling. Then he stood, eyes locked on Graham. "I'll step away now," he said, "unless you'd rather I stay." The question was surgical, and it was public. Graham said nothing. He couldn't. Back at the coat check, Elias retrieved his jacket. Camilla found him there 5 minutes later. "You did exactly what I knew you'd do." He looked at her, quiet. She smiled. "And now?" "Now everyone else knows too." Someone had kept rolling, even after the stream was cut. A shaky phone recording captured every second of Elias kneeling beside Isla, on stage. The Latin. The calm. The moment she breathed again. By noon, the clip was on 6 different social platforms under the same caption. The janitor saved her. The CEO froze. Camilla watched the view count climb past 200,000 before she closed her laptop. By 1 p.m., it had a name, the man with the mop. And by 1:30, the crisis team had gathered in the EUR executive conference room. Graham Leland's jaw was locked. His assistant read the situation report without looking him in the eye. Trending across 6 major platforms, comments are overwhelmingly sympathetic to Mercer. Media requests are piling up, and the board wants to know why a janitor had to step in during a medical emergency in front of global investors. Graham didn't respond. He just stared at the muted newsreel where the clip was now playing on loop. His daughter's face, pale, crumpling. Elias's hands steady. No title, no authority, just skill. "Fix it," he said at last. "How, sir?" "Denial. Control the story. Draft a statement. Say it was rehearsed, staged, a demonstration of emergency response protocol." Camilla, sitting at the edge of the room, spoke before she could stop herself. Isla almost collapsed. "Graham, you want to spin that?" He turned slowly toward her. "Do you have something to add, Ms. Tran?" "I was there. I saw her. That wasn't theater. That was a panic spiral." And Mercer interfered. Camilla leaned forward. "Mercer saved her. And if you can't admit that in front of a boardroom full of witnesses, you're not protecting your daughter. You're protecting your ego." Gasps flickered around the table. Graham's eyes narrowed. "Careful, Camilla." But she didn't back down. Careful was 2 days ago. Down in the service corridor, Elias loaded supplies into the storage closet. Vivian waited just outside the door, quietly sipping from a cocoa cup one of the staff had brought her. "Isla's okay, right?" she asked. "She's better." Vivian looked up at him, big brown eyes too observant for her age. "They're mad at you again, huh?" He exhaled. "Looks like it. You did the right thing." "I know." Vivian reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of notebook paper. She handed it to him like it was something sacred. "I wrote this for when people forget." Elias opened it, a simple drawing. Him kneeling beside a girl on a stage, spotlights overhead. Below it, in her blocky handwriting, "Sometimes heroes wear gloves, not capes." His throat tightened. He folded the paper and tucked it into his coat pocket, over his heart. Upstairs, the board had convened an emergency call. The footage had reached investors in Berlin and Tokyo. No one wanted to talk about the software suite Graham had spent a year building. They wanted to talk about the janitor. "What's his background?" one board member demanded. "Has he had medical training?" another asked. "Why wasn't this flagged during hiring?" Graham scrambled. "He's a quiet guy, no credentials on file, could be exaggeration. Maybe he memorized some field guide. He stabilized a panic attack faster than our on-call staff. Should we vet him for an advisory role?" someone suggested. "No," Graham snapped. "This is a distraction." "No," Camilla corrected gently. "This is a wake-up call." By evening, Elias received a message. Not from Graham, from Isla. A quiet thank you text. No emojis, just words. "You helped me again. I'm sorry he can't say it, but I can." He stared at the message longer than he should have, then replied, "You helped yourself. I just reminded your body how." She didn't respond, but she didn't need to. That night, Camilla sat across from Elias in the break room. The lights buzzed overhead, flickering softly. "You're not invisible anymore." Elias stirred his tea. "That wasn't the plan." "Plans change." He said nothing. Camilla leaned in. "They're digging now." Medvista came up on the board's call. Elias nodded once. "I didn't tell them." "I know. Do you want me to?" He paused. "Not yet." "Why?" He looked toward the door. Beyond it, Vivian sat reading on a bench, humming quietly to herself. "Because once this starts," Elias said, "it doesn't stop. Headlines, questions, attention. And if they aim for me, they'll eventually aim at her." Camilla followed his gaze. "Then let's be smart about it," she said. A beat. Then Elias asked the question he hadn't voiced in years. "What if they find out everything?" Camilla didn't flinch. Then they'll finally understand what they've been standing next to all along. Meanwhile, on the executive floor, Graham watched the clip again. Alone. In silence. No reporters, no applause. Just the unchangeable truth, playing on loop. When his daughter was in danger, the man he tried to erase became the only one she trusted. The headline dropped at 7:04 a.m. sharp. Leland Janitor identified as former chief trauma surgeon. Beneath it, a side-by-side photo. On the left, Elias Mercer in his work uniform, mop in hand. On the right, a 10-year-old press image, Dr. Mercer in scrubs, sleeves rolled, sweat on his brow, leading a team out of an OR. The caption burned like gasoline. Why did a man with this resume end up scrubbing floors for Leland Dynamics? By 8 a.m., it was on every national feed. Camilla watched from her office as the news surged through the building like a live wire. Slack channels froze. Conference calls were rescheduled. Everyone had questions, but no one had answers, except Graham. And he was boiling. He called an emergency executive meeting in the same boardroom where Elias had once spoken Latin through a half-closed door. But now, there was no ignoring him. Because now, the man with the mop had a name that couldn't be erased. "Who leaked this?" Graham barked, slamming his hand down on the table. "Does it matter?" Camilla replied calmly, seated near the end. "It's true. She never should have been on that stage," he snapped. "You put her there," she said. "He saved her." Murmurs rippled through the room. Board members exchanged glances. One of them, an older woman with sharp eyes and a sterling reputation, leaned forward. "Mr. Leland, did you know who Elias Mercer really was?" Graham hesitated. "No." Camilla watched him lie. Downstairs, Elias walked into the building the same way he always did, quietly, through the service entrance, dressed in the uniform. But this time, people stared, not with contempt, with something that looked like shame, or maybe awe. Even security nodded at him. He didn't stop to bask. He just punched in, checked his schedule, and walked toward the elevator like nothing had changed. But everything had. Vivian was already at school when it happened. Camilla had arranged for a trusted driver. She didn't need paparazzi showing up at Elias's apartment, or worse, confronting his daughter. But that didn't stop the reporters from circling Leland HQ like vultures. By noon, the press had given him a name, the surgeon in the shadows. By 1, the rumors started. Was Elias Mercer forced out of medicine? Did Leland knowingly hire a former surgeon as a janitor? Will he be reinstated? Camilla stayed close to Elias, intercepting calls, filtering emails, silencing invitations from morning shows and medical journals. "I didn't do this for attention," Elias said as they ducked into a side stairwell. "I know. I'm not going back. You don't have to. But you're not allowed to disappear either. Not anymore." He looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time, the lines around his eyes softened. Not from exhaustion, but from something like relief. Upstairs, Graham was unraveling. He'd spent a decade building an empire on silence and polish. He knew how to control narratives, but not this one. Not the one where the man he dismissed as background turned out to be a better father, better human, and better leader in 3 minutes than Graham had in 3 decades. And the worst part? Everyone saw it. By 3 p.m., a spontaneous applause broke out in the lobby. Not for Graham, for Elias. He tried to wave it off, to disappear into the stairwell again. But people followed, not physically, respectfully, from a distance, phones down, heads bowed. A man who had once stitched shattered bodies back together was now stitching back dignity in a building that had forgotten what it looked like. Camilla caught up with him near the east hallway. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded once. "Just tired." "You're allowed to be." He hesitated. "I didn't want this. I just wanted to protect her. Isla, Vivian, all of them." "You still can," she said. "But now, on your terms." That evening, Graham stepped into the elevator to leave early. For once, he didn't have an entourage, no assistants, no photographers, just silence. And Elias. They stood in opposite corners. The doors slid closed, no music, just the hum of truth between them. Graham finally spoke. "You set this up." Elias shook his head. "I didn't leak anything." "Then how did they find out?" "I stopped hiding." Graham looked at him, really looked for the first time. "I underestimated you." Elias's voice was calm. "Number? You never tried to see me in the first place." The elevator chimed. They stepped out together. One man, invisible no longer. The other, exposed. Camilla met Elias outside near the service entrance. Vivian waited in the car, waving from the back seat. "You ready?" Camilla asked. "For what?" "For what comes next?" Elias exhaled. "Yeah, I think I am." The memo hit employee inboxes just before sunrise. Subject: clarification. Regarding Mr. Elias Mercer's role, polite, sterile, legal, the kind of apology that apologized for nothing. It spoke of heroic professionalism and unexpected circumstances. It avoided the word surgeon. It didn't mention Graham's name once. But the staff wasn't fooled. By noon, a group of employees in IT posted a hallway tribute. A mop bucket, freshly polished, was set beside a framed photo of Elias holding Isla's hand on stage. Below it, a handwritten sign. "Leadership is what you do when no one gives you permission." They didn't tag HR. They didn't need to. Everyone already knew. The true reckoning came in the lobby. Graham was scheduled to give a press statement, a generic values and accountability performance to cool off investors. Camilla arrived early and stood near the elevator, arms crossed. She'd seen the draft. It was all spin, but something was already different. Elias was there, not scheduled, not invited, but present. And this time, he wasn't cleaning floors. He was standing beside his daughter. Vivian held his hand, dressed in her school uniform and a navy blazer too big for her. She looked proud. She looked unafraid. She looked like a mirror of her father. The press turned like iron to magnet. Flashbulbs lit the lobby, and Graham, walking out of the elevator, froze for a full beat when he saw them. Then came the moment no one could have scripted. Isla, quiet, graceful, vulnerable Isla, stepped into the lobby from behind her father, not with handlers, alone. She walked straight past Graham and stood beside Elias. A silence rippled through the crowd, like the building itself was holding its breath. Then she turned to the cameras and spoke. "I want to say thank you to the man who helped me breathe, twice, when I couldn't, when no one else did, and who never asked for anything in return." Graham looked like he'd been slapped. Isla continued. "You weren't just kind. You were prepared, because you used to do this. You still do this, no matter what you're wearing." Elias didn't move, didn't interrupt, just watched her, eyes steady. Isla looked at the cameras. "You asked why he was cleaning floors, but the better question is, why did we only notice him after he saved me?" A low murmur swept the lobby. Reporters, employees, even executives leaning in, and then finally Graham stepped forward. No podium, no microphone, just him. He looked at Elias for a long moment. The old sharp smugness was gone. What remained was hollow, tired, and something else. Recognition. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I was wrong." Still, Elias said nothing. Graham swallowed. "I judged you by your uniform. I treated you like furniture. I let my pride blind me to what was right in front of me." More cameras clicked. The feed went live in real time. "Thank you for helping my daughter. Thank you for protecting her when I didn't." That was all. No hand offered, no redemption speech, just words. But the entire building heard them. And that, finally, was enough. Later, outside the main entrance, Camilla found Elias leaning against the brick wall, watching Vivian skip through the parking lot. "You didn't say anything back." "I didn't need to." "He looked like he wanted more." "He always does." She smiled. "You know, after all this, people might want to promote you." "I don't want a promotion," Elias said. "Then what do you want?" He looked down at the pavement. "To be left alone, to raise my daughter, to stay ready, just in case someone else forgets to breathe." Camilla nodded. "You'll get that, but people are going to remember your name now." He exhaled. "Let them. Maybe the next man in coveralls will get treated better because of it." She watched him walk back to Vivian's side. The man who once walked quiet to avoid being seen now walked straight through the center of attention, unbothered, unbowed, not angry, just known. Inside, Graham returned to his office and sat down heavily behind his desk. Isla had left behind a note, one line. "Dad, I trusted him more than you. That's not his failure. It's yours." He folded it once, then again, and again, until it disappeared into his palm like a secret no apology could undo. The next morning, Elias walked into Leland HQ, just like he had every day for 13 months. Same uniform, same service entrance, same steel-banded time clock. But something had changed, and it wasn't just the silence that followed him through the halls. It was the door to the janitor closet. Someone had taped a single piece of paper to it, handwritten, no signature, just 4 words. "Thank you for staying." He stared at it for a moment, didn't touch it, just absorbed it. Then unlocked the door, hung his coat, and stepped into routine like it was an old friend. Because that was the difference between him and them. He never needed the spotlight. He just never deserved the shadows. Upstairs, Vivian sat in the break room waiting for him, swinging her legs over the side of a chair far too tall for her. She had her science workbook open and a purple pen she chewed on when she thought too hard. "Miss Camilla says I can sit in on her meeting today," she said as he walked in. "She did, huh?" "She said I should know how people make decisions with power." Elias poured her a juice from the cooler. "You already do. You just haven't forgotten kindness yet." Vivian smiled. "Is it true? They want you to take over the whole staff safety training thing?" He handed her the juice. "That's what they said. Are you gonna?" Elias leaned against the counter, watching the sunrise edge its way over the concrete outside. "I haven't decided yet." "Why?" He smiled gently. "Because dignity isn't something you chase, Vivi. It's something you carry. Doesn't matter if it's in a coat or a mop bucket." She nodded slowly, like she understood every word. And maybe she did. That afternoon, Elias found a new addition to the hallway outside the executive elevator. A display case. Inside it, a folded trauma coat, a pair of surgical gloves, a photo of Isla smiling on the summit stage beside him, and one caption. "In recognition of service beyond title. Dr. Elias Mercer. He never stopped showing up." He stood there for a long time. Then, slowly, he reached into his back pocket and placed a clean janitor's glove inside the case, closed the latch, and walked away. In his office, Graham watched from the security feed. He didn't call Elias, didn't summon him, didn't ask to meet. Instead, he wrote a private check to an anonymous scholarship fund in Vivian Mercer's name. The only line on the memo, "To prepare the doctor she's already becoming." Camilla met Elias at the elevator later that week. "Ready?" she asked. "For what?" "For a world that sees you now." He glanced at the display case. "I was never hiding. They just weren't looking." She smiled. "You sure you don't want a corner office?" "I already have one." He nodded toward Vivian, who was at the front desk, reciting CPR instructions to a fascinated group of HR interns. Camilla laughed. "Good answer." And as Elias walked back down the hall, hand in his daughter's, nothing looked different, but everything was. Because when power had failed, when money had hesitated, when status had gone silent, it was a janitor who stepped forward, not to rise, but to serve. And in doing so, he reminded them all, dignity is not disposable. Subscribe and don't miss our next story. She found her husband's secret retirement account. Now the family is suing her for spending it. Trust me, you'll feel it. And tell me in the comments, what injustice should we tackle next?